Former Coronation Street star Chris Fountain was a fit and healthy 35-year-old, or so he thought.
So imagine the sheer panic he felt when he woke up one morning 2 months ago to discover that he couldn't speak properly after suffering what doctors described as a mini stroke. Chris joins us now alongside Dr Ellie Cannon.
Welcome.
Both of you.
Good
Hello.
to see
Wow,
you.
so you've only just posted this, so this is all new to lots of your friends who had no clue that this has happened.
Absolutely. I mean, this was... so I had the stroke on the 11th of August. And then I was in hospital for 4 days, but then I took some time away from kind of social media and posting anything to. Well,
go back to that 11th of August. So you talk to your mum multiple times every day. That's a lovely thing to do, and so she actually woke you up.
Yeah, I woke up in the morning to a phone call from my mum, and it was one of those. I kind of picked up the phone and we were talking for a while, and then I was coming round while I was on the phone, and I was aware that I was trying to say something, but I couldn't remember what I was trying to say, and my words weren't really coming out, and I was just like, I'll call you back. And then I was kind of like, oh, I'm just tired, so I kind of got up and was wandering around the house, and basically I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something wasn't quite right. So I was kind of like trying to identify things in the house. I was like, there was like a towel over the top of the door, and I was looking, but the weirdest thing was, like, my inside voice, like in my head, was perfect. So I'm looking, and in my head, I'm going, well, towel. And then I tried to say it, and I couldn't say what I was thinking. It wasn't like my brain and my mouth weren't, like, on the same page.
So you call 111, you speak to them, you struggle to sort of explain your symptoms because, like you just said there was this disconnect. The paramedics are called. You're thinking, right, well, they've called the paramedics. There must be something serious here.
Yeah.
They weren't too concerned to begin with, but they took you to the hospital, and that's where you had the scan.
Yeah, it was strange. I mean, just before that, the thing that kind of made it more obvious to me was I picked up a book and tried to read, like, the back of it. And like I say, in my head, the reading was fine, but when I tried to read aloud, it just wasn't working. That's when I was like, well, my mum said to call 111. I'll ring them, and couldn't give them my address. I was really struggling to give them my address, and at this point, physically, I felt fine. And then eventually, when I got to the hospital, I sat with a nurse, and she was asking me to give her my symptoms, and it just became very, very difficult to speak, and I was embarrassed and, like, in panic and scared, and, like, I just felt really stupid because I couldn't articulate myself. It was really strange. And then, so they said they were going to keep me in hospital. I might have a CT scan, which, funnily enough, like, came back clear. So at that point, I was like, oh, well, I'm fine then. There's nothing wrong. And then they said they wanted to keep me in overnight, and then the next day they wanted to test me, give me an MRI scan.
And that was it. And
then, yeah, the next day, I had the MRI scan and was kind of sat in hospital for a while. And then after a while, the doctor came back, and I remember it vividly because he said the word stroke. And although it was a mini stroke, a TIA, as soon as he said stroke, it was kind of like I was looking at him and he was telling me all this information, but I just wasn't, like, as soon as he said stroke, my brain just kind of was just going, why has this happened? Is this going to happen again? Like, my brain was just swamped. So all the stuff that he said after that, I didn't even kind of take in, because everything, it was like someone had just pulled the rug from underneath me. I was just like, oh my God.
Well, you're
like,
thinking,
what?
you know, at this age, how can that happen?
Exactly.
That's the last thing you're thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, because I keep myself quite fit. Like last year, I went on a bit of a mad health kick and lost a load of weight, and I'm training all the time. So
why did it happen? What did they say?
At the time, when I was in hospital, no one really could give me a definitive answer. So, I mean, because I'm so young, they wanted to test for everything. So they took loads and loads of blood. And then, yeah, like I said, I got moved to the Royal London stroke ward, which was incredible. I mean, the whole experience of being in hospital was new to me. I'd never spent any time there, but everybody was incredible. The care that I received was, like, I can't articulate how well I was looked after. But yeah, I mean, so I was in hospital till the Sunday, and then they let me out, which was I was so happy to be out, and I just had a different perspective on everything, because if I hadn't have gone to hospital when I did, and, like, my original plan was, when I spoke to my mum, I was like, oh, I'll be all right. I might go for a coffee and then go to the gym. If I'd have done that and this clot had moved to a different part of my brain, it could have been...
Well, they found on closer examination that you had an issue with your heart, a little hole in your heart, which could have caused the clot, which could have...
Yeah, not so much caused the clot. So basically, I've found out since going back into hospital that I have a hole in my heart.
Yeah.
now, apparently this is quite common, and a lot of people will go through life and not ever realise. But the problem I had was that the clot got through the hole and then went to my brain, which went to the left-hand side of my brain, which was my speech and memory, which is obviously why I couldn't speak properly. But like I say, I mean, I was... As traumatising it's been, and like it's been a really weird few months trying to accept and like move forward and process things. Like it could have been so much worse for me. Like I could have lost the use of my arm, or my face could have dropped. It could have been really.
Well, you have been doing lots of therapy with your speech. You've got about 90% of it back, so you're doing really, really well.
You wouldn't know.
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean,
you wouldn't.
It's like the first few days out of hospital, it was still kind of. I was stumbling over my words quite a bit, and it became really frustrating, and I was quite irritable because I knew what I was trying to say, and I couldn't quite get my words, and I kind of stopped halfway through sentences, and it was quite tough.
Dr. Willie, I mean, people will be going, wow, here's a fit and healthy 35-year-old man. How common is something like this?
So it's very uncommon for somebody like Chris, because as he said, he's young, he's healthy, he's slim, he exercises. So it would only really happen if somebody had a background health problem, like unfortunately Chris did. In his case, it was undiagnosed. But obviously, stroke is something, and mini strokes, TIAs, something we associate with people in older age.
And so how do you recognise it? Because it took a while for Chris to even acknowledge that, hang on a second, he had a cold shower, he had a coffee, I mean, I'm obviously a bit tired. How do you recognise it?
Well, what he describes is so good, because that's all sort of like the speech problems, which we often hear. You know, you've described that so eloquently that you actually couldn't formulate those words, and that's called aphasia. And that's a classic sign of a stroke. And then the other signs that people should be aware of are if your face droops, which you also mentioned you thankfully didn't have, or if you feel weakness somewhere very suddenly in an arm, you can't hold your cup of tea or something like that. And people need to do exactly what Chris did, call 111 or 999.
Just the time is imperative, isn't it, to try and get it as soon as possible, because the more you leave it, like I've heard, like from my putting out the video, people are saying that like they've found out later on that they've had mini strokes because they've not gone to the hospital and they've just kind of gone, oh, well, I'm tired or something. But that could be catastrophic eventually.
Well, there was a big campaign act, wasn't there? I mean,
absolutely, absolutely. Time is of the essence. So when we talk about fast, so that's face, arms, speech, the T is for time. Do exactly what Chris did and call, because nowadays, when people have a stroke or a mini stroke, we treat people like they've had a heart attack, and we can give like clot-busting drugs really, really quickly in the ambulance, in specialised centres. So the quicker you do that, the better your chances of recovery.
OK, thank you. Well,
glad you're all right.
You're doing so well.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Lovely to
see life in a whole new different way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Thank you.